Jerry Coyne, as I said to you, is probably one of the United States' leading not just skeptics but intellects as well. A man who has come from a strict or strong science background, but has also been very strongly an argument that science and scientific progress requires a strong climate of skepticism. And along with Richard Dawkins, I would suggest to you, is probably one of the world's leading atheists. But he's also a proponent of free speech, a very strong proponent of free speech, and also a skeptic in the sense that he questions, and understandably so, given what we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks anyhow, to do with the indigenisation of New Zealand universities. He questions the realm of the supernatural being introduced to science as some form of perversion, I guess, or corruption of what science could and should be. And he has made himself available, and I find them very thankful of that, from New York this morning. Oh no, is he from Chicago? I will find out in a second anyhow. Jerry Coyne joins us now. Jerry, welcome to the show. Where are you, Chicago or New York, Jerry?
Oh, Chicago. That's where I've been for a long time.
Okay, right. Good on you. You actually were educated at Harvard University. You've written a number of books, include Why Evolution is True, Faith versus Fact, and matters like that. But I'm interested in what you think of New Zealand particularly, and our Auckland University, our leading tertiary institution in this country, Jerry, incorporating mystical elements into the teaching of science. Does that fit with you?
Yeah, it's not just Auckland University that incorporates mystical elements in the teaching of science. I think it's countrywide that there's a pressure now to try to harmonize mamari with modern science. Whoops, sorry. My cell phone went off. Okay, sorry. Yeah, and so Auckland University is just the one that's most prominent to me because, I've been to New Zealand. That's the reason I got involved with this. I went over there, I made friends, mostly scientists, I guess, and I kept in touch with them, and then several of them were people who had signed the listener letter, the infamous listener letter that started off all of this stuff. And their demonization horrified me, and then I read a lot more about Mauri and what was happening, and heard about what was going on, especially at Auckland, but also at universities like Otago and others. Auckland is the one I know the best, but the movement to water down modern science with superstition and indigenous ways of knowing is countrywide as far as I can see. And I find it very distressing because I really do love New Zealand. I enjoyed my month there, and I hate to see it go down the drain.
And is that the end result of that? If the supernatural, if Mātauranga Māori, if sort of cultural perspective of science is introduced to our curriculum, could that have international repercussions for the students who graduate from those tertiary institutions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For the students that graduate, they probably will not have as comprehensive an education in the sciences as, people in comparable countries. For one thing, at Auckland, and I just wrote about this on my website the other day, requires of all majors, including science majors, to take a course in, well, I'm not sure what it's really about, but it's really about Te Tiriti. Pardon me if I get the pronunciation wrong.
It's good enough.
Okay, yeah, it's basically about how the Treaty of Waitangi, and I may be pronouncing that wrong too, but how the Treaty of Waitangi impacts our understanding of science. And that's a required course, not only for science majors, but each major has its own version of that course, and it's required. And again, if you look at the syllabus of that course, it has very little to do with what I recognize as science. It's basically a course in indoctrinating the students with the idea that indigenous ways of knowing are co-equal to modern science, and have to be given priority and integrated with modern science. And the students that take this course are, first of all, going to miss out on, one science course. But, that's the least of it. What happens is they'll get confused about what science really is. I mean, is it mythology? Is it what they call Western science, but what I call modern science? What is the methodology of science? Because the Madaranga Maori method is completely different from the method of modern science. So they'll wind up confused, and I think that's going to put them not in a good position on the international job market. I mean, it goes further than that, because New Zealand is not going to attract foreign students with a curriculum like this. And students that are really, really interested in learning modern science are just going to leave the country, as far as I can see. This is my prediction, at least.
I'm interested because you have travelled extensively, and you're particularly strong in the science area, and as a skeptic as well too, Jerry. And I guess the question I would have of you is New Zealand unique in this, or are other Western countries also pursuing indigenisation and trying to integrate indigenous cultures and beliefs into their educational facilities?
Yeah, well, it's not unique to New Zealand. I would call New Zealand the most far-reaching example of indigenization, and the one in which the government and apparently the non-Maori public are happy to agree to. But it is happening in the United States. Native Americans are, for example, preventing scientists from studying bones that have been dug up because they have to be reburied without study, and it's happening in Canada to some extent. But in terms of New Zealand, it seems to me, from what I know, that the entire realm of sciences has been deeply infected by this sacralization of the oppressed peoples, which I think, and this is why I write about New Zealand more than I write about, for example, this movement in the U.S. and Canada, because it's far-reaching there, and also because I like the country so much, I just hate to see it go this way.
Listen, you are very strong on, obviously, the belief that there is no supernatural deity out there, nothing that imposes upon the daily lives of humans on this planet. And I guess, is science and religion, in your view, compatible at all?
Well, no. To put it bluntly, one of the books you mentioned I wrote is called Faith versus Fact, with the subtitle Why Science and Religion Are Incompatible. And the reason I'm an atheist has everything to do with my rejection of the supernatural in science, because science is evidence-based, and I'm an atheist because I see no evidence. I think Bertrand Russell was asked, if he died and went to heaven, and he was at the pearly gates, and, St. Peter wouldn't let him in because he said, you really didn't believe in God very much. And Russell's response was, you didn't give me enough evidence. And that's the same reason that's the reason I'm an atheist, simply because there's no evidence for the supernatural. And every scientist conducts his or her experiments as if there was no God. Science is really intrinsically and deeply atheistic. When we do an experiment, we do not assume that supernatural influences are going to affect our results, and we don't even take them into account because they've never proven to be of any value. Science is not atheistic by definition. It's turned out atheistic because we've simply learned that thinking about the supernatural has never helped us make any progress in understanding the world. And this is the reason why the mythological aspects of Madaranga Maori, which are pervasive, they're not all-encompassing, there is some real knowledge in there, but it's the mythological, supernatural, and vitalistic aspects of what I call Madaranga Maori, which make it untenable as anything that can be co-equal with modern science.
Auckland University is proposing a minimum of 25 student workload hours, although you've got to pass the course before you get the degree, on Te Tiriti, knowledge of place, and knowledge systems, or Maori knowledge systems. Again, it doesn't seem that you can question those knowledge systems if they conflict with fact. Does that, I mean, again, as a free speech advocate, you would also, I assume, find that anathematic to yourself?
Well, free speech is, I believe in free speech. I mean, somebody could go around and spout, Maori mythology as much as they want. It's when it is taught in the classroom that it is no longer free speech. It's not academic freedom either. I don't have the right to teach creationism in my evolution class, and I don't think that science teachers in New Zealand should be teaching mythology in their science classes, or to intimate to the students that mythology is something that really needs to be there to help the students understand science. The example I wrote about recently was the idea, well, you know all about cowrie dieback. I'm sure everybody in New Zealand knows about that. But now there's starting to be an initiative to use Maori mythology to help cure cowrie dieback. And it's based on an old myth that the cowrie tree and the sperm whale were once brothers, and they were created to be brothers. So that's the first thing that's wrong. They're related in a very distant way evolutionarily, but they weren't created to be brothers. And the cowrie tree was given some fins by the creator, and this finned tree decided to take to the water and became whales. And so there's a deep connection between the whale and the cowrie tree. And the upshot of that is that they're trying to cure cowrie dieback, which we know is caused by an organism called an oomycete. To cure it by chanting Maori chants, I can't remember what they're called, it starts with a K, at the trees.
Karakia.
And also, kakia, and also to rub the trees with whale oil and whale bones. And that is just, I mean, nobody would think of that without the existence of this mythology. And it's a complete waste of time, if for no other reason than cowrie blight starts at the roots of the tree, and rubbing the trunk with whatever you want, bones or whale oil or ambergris, is not going to do anything. And yet, it's all over the internet. And when I question it, advocates of Mataranga Maori write back and say, well, we have a different way of understanding the world than science does. And my response to that would be, well, all the progress that we've made in understanding how the world works and improving the world scientifically has come through modern science. Very, very little, if any, has come through the use of indigenous knowledge, which after all is knowledge that is mired back centuries and really does not change with time.